Caracalla. On April 8, 217 AD, 29-year-old Emperor Caracalla was on military campaign near the ancient city of Carrhae, in what is now southern Turkey. He had ruled alone since 211 AD, when he had his own brother Geta stabbed to death in their mother's arms. He then killed approximately 20,000 of Geta's supporters. He was brutal, direct, and permanently on the move with his army. That morning, the army was marching. Around midday, Caracalla needed to urinate. Roman armies did not stop for individuals, not even the emperor. He dismounted from his horse and walked a short distance from the column into the open ground beside the road. He had only one bodyguard with him. His hands were occupied, his back was turned. A soldier named Julius Marcialis stepped out of the column and walked toward him. Marcialis had two grievances he had never forgotten. Caracalla had denied him a promotion to centurion. More than that, Caracalla had executed his brother. Marcialis drew his sword and drove it into Caracalla's unprotected back. The emperor collapsed immediately. Marcialis struck again. Caracalla's own bodyguard killed Marcialis seconds later, but the emperor was already dead in the dirt. He had thousands killed without looking them in the eye. He died with his back turned, trousers down, on the side of a road. Commodus. On December 31, 192 AD, 31-year-old Emperor Commodus was getting ready to usher in the new year by fighting as a gladiator in the arena. He had ruled for 12 years, renamed Rome after himself, renamed the months of the calendar after himself, and demanded to be worshipped as the living incarnation of Hercules. His mistress Marcia, his chamberlain Eclectus, and the praetorian prefect Latus, commander of the emperor's elite bodyguard, had decided he had to go. On New Year's Eve, Marcia mixed poison into his wine. Commodus drank it, felt ill, and vomited. The poison came back up. He was sick but still alive, and before he could recover and discover what they had done, they knew they had to act. They sent for Narcissus, Commodus's personal wrestling trainer. The emperor had retreated to his private bath chamber and was lying in the tub, weak from vomiting. Narcissus walked in, wrapped both hands around Commodus's throat, and held on. Commodus fought back. He was strong, but the poison had already taken something from him. Narcissus strangled him to death in the water. The man who called himself Hercules, strongest of all men, was killed in a bathtub by his own fitness coach. Nero. On June 9, 68 AD, 30-year-old Emperor Nero was running for his life through the outskirts of Rome. He had ruled for 14 years and spent most of them burning things down, including many believed the city itself. He had killed his own mother, executed 2 wives. Now the Senate had formally declared him an enemy of the state, and Roman legions across the empire had turned against him. Nero fled with a small group of servants to a villa owned by his freed slave Phaon, 4 miles outside the city. A messenger arrived shortly after. The Senate had sentenced him to death, stripped naked, head locked in a wooden fork, beaten to death in public with iron rods. Nero could not face it. He told his companions he needed to die before they arrived. None of them would help him do it. Outside, the thunder of hooves grew louder. The soldiers were closing in. With the help of his secretary Epaphroditus, Nero finally pressed a blade into his own throat. As he bled out, he asked for a mirror. He wanted to see what he looked like dying. His last words, according to those present, were, "What an artist the world is losing." He ruled an empire. He died in a borrowed farmhouse, checking his reflection as he bled. Caligula. January 24, 41 AD. Rome. The crowd is roaring. Caligula sits above them all, draped in gold, watching gladiators perform below. He's 28 years old, emperor for less than 4 years, and right now, he looks completely untouchable. But somewhere in that same palace, a man is gripping the handle of a knife. His name is Cassius Chaerea, senior officer of the Praetorian Guard. He's been planning this for months. Here's what Caligula never understood about power. You can humiliate a soldier once, twice, maybe 10 times. But there is a moment, quiet, invisible, when humiliation stops producing fear and starts producing something far more dangerous. Caligula had made a habit of mocking Chaerea in front of other soldiers, calling him soft, weak, laughing while the room laughed with him. Chaerea never flinched, never reacted. He just remembered. Around 40 men had quietly gathered around that same feeling. Hidden inside the guard, inside the emperor's own circle. The games are still going below. Caligula has no idea this is the last hour of his life. Around midday, he left through a narrow covered passageway beneath the theater. Chaerea and the conspirators were already waiting. As Caligula entered, Chaerea drove his blade into the emperor's neck and shoulder. Caligula fell, crying out that he was still alive. The others closed in and stabbed him at least 30 times. His wife and infant daughter were killed the same day. The emperor, who declared himself a living god, died on a wet stone floor, screaming that he was still breathing until he wasn't. Domitian. On September 18, 96 AD, Emperor Domitian was alone in his bedroom. 44 years old, 15 years on the throne. He had built roads that still stand today, stabilized a failing currency, pushed Rome's borders further than they had been in a generation. But walk into any room in that palace and you would feel it immediately. Something thick in the air that made servants move carefully, speak softly, avoid eye contact. He had executed senators on suspicion alone, no trial, no evidence. Just a whisper in the wrong ear, and a man would vanish. Philosophers were expelled from Rome, their books burned in public squares. Fear had become the architecture of his reign, built brick by brick until it held everything up and suffocated everyone inside. Even the men who made his bed, even the woman who shared it. That fear had a name, Stephanus, one of Domitian's household stewards. For days he had walked the palace with his left arm in a bandage, hiding a dagger inside it. The plot included his chamberlain Parthenius, his wife Domitia's allies, and possibly the emperor-in-waiting Nerva himself. Stephanus entered the bedroom with urgent news and handed Domitian a document. While the emperor read it, Stephanus drove the hidden blade into his groin. Domitian grabbed the knife with his bare hand, cutting his fingers to the bone, and wrestled Stephanus to the ground. 4 more conspirators burst through the door and stabbed him 6 more times until he stopped moving. He spent years executing men he suspected of plotting against him. In the end, it was the servant he never noticed who finished it. Claudius. On October 13, 54 AD, 63-year-old Emperor Claudius sat down to a private feast in his palace. He had ruled Rome for 13 years. When Claudius first walked into the Senate, they laughed. To them, he was furniture, a placeholder, a man to be managed. They were wrong. Quietly, almost invisibly, he had reshaped the empire from the inside. He sent legions into Britain and won. He kept 70 million people fed, taxed, and alive for 13 years. But power doesn't care about results. It cares about who holds it next. His wife Agrippina watches him from across the dinner table. She has already made her decision. Her son, young Nero, deserves that throne. One problem stands between Nero and the purple robes of emperor. Britannicus, Claudius's own blood son, who would by Roman law inherit everything his father built. Agrippina hired Locusta, a professional poisoner. They chose their weapon carefully, his favorite dish, mushrooms. Claudius ate them and felt sick immediately, cramping, vomiting. The poison was working, but too slowly. His physician Xenophon was part of the plot. Pretending to help the emperor purge the toxin, Xenophon pushed a feather down his throat coated in a second, faster poison. Within hours, Claudius was dead. By morning, Nero had been declared emperor, killed by his doctor, his wife, and his dinner. The 3 things a man is supposed to trust most. Valerian. In the summer of 260 AD, Emperor Valerian rode out to meet Persian king Shapur I after a devastating Roman defeat at the Battle of Edessa, near modern-day Turkey. His legions were broken. His men were dying of plague. He agreed to meet Shapur in person to negotiate a way out. There was no negotiation. Persian forces seized Valerian the moment he arrived. He became the first Roman emperor in history to be captured alive by a foreign enemy. Shapur kept him as a living trophy. According to Roman and Persian sources, Shapur forced Valerian to kneel beside his horse so the king could step on his back when mounting. This went on for years. When Valerian finally died, possibly from captivity, possibly killed, Shapur did not bury him. He had Valerian's skin removed, dyed red, stuffed with straw, and mounted inside a Persian temple. For generations, visitors could see the preserved skin of a Roman emperor displayed like a hunting trophy. He commanded the greatest army in the world. He spent his final years as a footstool and his afterlife as a stuffed exhibit in an enemy temple.